It's another beautiful Monday morning, starting the week from here in Abuja. Good morning, Maupe Yusuf.
Well, someone was asking the other day the evidence of Christmas. I can see it outside now with that Christmassy fog. Welcome, Hamatan. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Koka.
Well, rise and shine. I'm Kayode Kikilu, right here in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital. Yes, indeed, it's in the air. I know it's tricky for a lot of people, but let's just keep that hope alive. And speaking of that, we're starting the show on a cheery note today. We start by saying a huge congratulations to Valentine Okoli, who is the winner of the 30 million naira funding, courtesy Channels Television Social Entrepreneur Program, reality TV show, I should say, Funded Forward Season 1. So we're starting on that note. It was a very emotional moment for Valentine Okoli, and indeed all of the other finalists. We call them change agents. They'd gone through weeks upon weeks of grueling encounters, had to take lessons on funding, on tweaking their products, ensuring that their products are fit not just for consumption, for partnership, and all of that. Different ideas ranging from sustainable ways of building, agriculture, finance, even pharmaceutical. We had a very, very brilliant young man who was trying to get medication drugs to people in a more efficient and innovative way. We had one of them trying to convert, who's actually converting poultry droppings into gas, and all of them. But it came down to just three of them. It came down to Tasha, Ayodele, and Valentine. Eventually, Valentine emerged the winner overall. Valentine Okoli, who a lot of people will now know as the Abacha Man, is the winner of Season 1 of Channels Television's Funded Forward. And there you see him in the black suit and orange tie. His idea is quite interesting, very innovative, I should say. Essentially, what he does is try to bring Nigerian delicacies, Abacha and the rest, in a well-packaged manner. So he has this Abacha noodles spelled Nuudles, not the conventional way to spell noodles. And he had a very captivating personal story as to why he was going this route. And it is great to see that he is now being funded 30 million naira grant. So that means that whatever he's been doing before, he can now do on a bigger scale. And I see how this will, of course, trickle down the way. By the way, the other finalists, other change agents also got 15 and 10 million naira. So they essentially were all winners yesterday. So congratulations to not just Valentine, not just to Tasha, and not just to Ayodele, but to every young Nigerian out there who is seeking to make a change. Bukola.
Yes, indeed, Kadi. Congratulations to all of them, not just Valentine Okoli, to Aishat Atta and Ayodele Erile. I could do with some 10 and 15 million naira right now. We'll make Christmas more colorful. Well, congratulations to the change agents, and I particularly like Valentine Okoli's story. It's a story, it's a Nigerian story. It's a story of resilience, the story of industry. It's the comeback story. Some years ago, it is said that Valentine lost 10 kilograms of cassava. And, who knew that some years down the line, he would get the opportunity to be in Channels Television's Funded Forward. And today, Valentine has emerged winner of, 30 million naira grand prize, for his industry, for his resilience, for his passion, for his commitment, to the business. And 30 million naira will go a long way, to Valentine's, transforming Valentine's business. So many other people in the value chain would be employed, those who would work at the farm with him. And the food business, has a lot of promise in his environment. The same goes for Aisha, who is in a very unique field, converting poultry droplets into gas. That's, an energy that government has been working assiduously into expanding in recent times. So there's a lot of potential, there's a lot of promise, for Nigerian youths. Valentine is just 29 years old, and he has a promising future ahead of him with this opportunity that Channels Television has given him. And, it's the maiden edition, so we urge younger people, to prepare to have their lives transformed in the second edition of Funding Forward that will come your way again soon. Maokwe.
You know, beyond the monies that they received, you know, certainly was very exciting for those who eventually won. I mean, there's always the thrill of winning. I dare say that all 12 who were chosen to be in this house were all winners, because you couldn't have gone through this house. I mean, did you watch the series? Did you see how grueling it was? You couldn't have gone through it without coming out with a clearer knowledge of where your business should be and what you needed to do to take it forward. So that even if you didn't win any money, because I think that beyond the cash that they won was the knowledge, the fact that the marketplace is a place that is demanding, and that's what they got to do in this boot camp of sort in the period that they were in the house. So very interesting for many Nigerians who continue to look forward to you know, ideas, because I think what is very important to also underscore here is the fact that this country is beaming with lots of ideas. It just needs people who will take a chance on young stars and see how it is that they can push them forward, and not just in terms of, you know, pushing society forward, because that's what you're able to do when ideas eventually succeed, but you also create a path for the next generation. So congratulations to us. Congratulations, yes, when I say us, I mean to Channels Television, for being able to put this together, for being able to take a chance on these young people. I'm hoping that this will be a microcosm of what exactly is possible in society, where we have many more you know, places where these ideas can be allowed to contend, and you know, whoever it is can, well, if funding is available, hopefully funding should be available. There are many banks who are always saying they're looking for, you know, ideas to fund. But if you also have places where ideas can be refined to see whether they will be able to stand the test in the marketplace, to see how well, say for instance, products we do, because a lot of people have great ideas. We've been told about how many businesses start in a year, lots, thousands of businesses, as a matter of fact. What exactly has caused that? And that's sometimes because they haven't been put through the fire. So it's a wonderful thing that this has happened for these young people. We hope to see abacha, not just abroad, but also abacha, very well packaged in our supermarkets, in our markets, as a matter of fact, and become something that, you know, the everyday Nigerian is able to eat anywhere. We hope to see that this particular idea of turning poultry droplets into gas, you know, to fund, to push energy. Energy is usually in high demand in this country. We know what it's been like with electricity supply. We hope that these ideas will go forward, that they have been given the push and the drive, the boost and the knowledge that they need to be able to make these businesses survive. So it'll be good to see, as you said, Buki, it is season 1. Who knows what season 2 holds? I'd say, you know, just be on the lookout. Be on the lookout. You never can tell when they're going to start recruiting again. And don't make sure that you do not miss the chance. Hopefully, it will be far bigger than what we had in season 1. And will be more encompassing. And we hope that we've been able to also encourage other businesses to be able to look into these areas. People talk about venture capital, venture capitalists who might want to come together, pool resources, and also inspire, because whether people are not like it, they say venture capitalists are already doing what they can do. But I think beyond what they're doing in the back rooms, when you put this on TV, what it does is that it inspires many more young people to see what it is that they too can do and what their ideas are capable of doing. So, congratulations to Valentine Okoli and to all the other winners. I think we can move forward now to the day's papers and see what we have. Let's look at let's start with Nigerian News Direct. You can see here what they're saying. The lead story says, coups, no place for military rule in Africa. That's according to Tinubu. You see it right there on the front page. The writer says Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso alliance won't weaken ECOWAS's resolve for democracy as ECOWAS announces re-engagement plans, demands short transition strategy, assures Sierra Leone, Guinea-Bissau presidents support over disturbances. So that is right there for you on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct. You also have a number of other stories right there. Kaduna drone mishap, senators donate December salaries to victims. Okay, you heard right. They donate December salaries to victims. Many don't be taking any salaries home. Will the House of Reps do same? Just wondering. MPC meeting, hike interest rate to reduce inflation. IMF advises CBN. And you also see our airstrikes killed terrorist kingpin, others in Niger. That's according to the Nigerian Air Force. So we'll leave it there for Nigerian News Direct.
And turn next to this Nigeria, which leads with something entirely different. Listen to this. Nigeria's oil revenue shrouded in secrecy. SERAP, that's a Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project, demands full disclosure from federal government of all NNPCL daily production exports, may seek legal redress in 7 days to push for compliance. Remember, a lot of attention is being turned on the activities, the daily operations of the NNPCL and the demand for more accountability. I recall the former emir was asking the other day, where are the dollars? Where are the dollars from the NNPC? So SERAP seems to be following up on that with this one and promises to sue in 7 days. A few more stories from the front page of this Nigeria. 2024 budget, legislators to domicile 80 billion naira constituency projects in Labour Ministry. That's new. Unless I'm mistaken, Kayode. I'll take that again. 2024 budget, legislators to domicile 80 billion naira constituency projects in Labour Ministry. So what are the implications and dimensions to this? I guess you'll have to find out from the front page of, inside pages rather, page 2 to be precise, of this Nigeria. I guess I'm going to be doing that as well.
Absolutely.
You're still turning it over in your mind, right?
So I'm thinking, I know there was this public works thing that the Ministry of Labour, well, then Minister of State for Labour, it was back and forth with the National Assembly. I'm talking about Mr. Festus Keyamo. So I don't know if this is the public works project or something else. And is this all of a constituency project or just some domicile, but certainly something to pay attention to?
Well, how far-reaching will it be? 80 billion naira for 774 local governments? I'm just wondering. Well, one more before we exit this Nigeria. CBN blames DMB's customers' high-volume withdrawals for naira scarcity. That's a page 20 read. Let's leave it there for this Nigeria.
Well, some say, isn't it their money anyway? But we'll take a look at the Guardian newspaper. The previous paper was talking about things shrouded in secrecy. Well, the Guardian leads with something similar on a different scale this time around. We'll take a look at it. Asset declaration. 6 months on, Tinubu's net worth unknown. CSO's kick. And you see images of past 4 presidents Nigeria's had, including the current president, and, well, their assets declaration. So Yar'Adua declared his assets. Olusegun Obasanjo's assets in 1999 and 2007 unknown. You see former President Muhammadu Buhari's assets declaration known. Goodluck Jonathan's assets kept secret. And now there's a big question mark just under the current president's image, President Bola Tinubu. And you see part 1 of the 5th schedule to the 1999 Constitution provides that every public officer shall immediately after taking office and thereafter at the end of every 4 years and at the end of his or her term of office submit to the Code of Conduct Bureau a written declaration of all his properties, assets, and liabilities, and those of his unmarried children under the age of 18 years. So that is where we are right now. Transparency, accountability is a big deal here in Nigeria, and it's important for the leaders to set the tone. I mean, why would you then expect the the citizens to be transparent and accountability. Accountable rather. That's not an excuse, but we need to do the right thing. And you see this one, ECOWAS team negotiates with Niger on return to civil rule. That was a big one from the meeting yesterday and over the past couple of days. So what will come out of it? So there are two options, obviously, and it looks like ECOWAS is weighing both options. We'll see how this one, of course, plays out. I'll take one more for you. This will set a tone for a conversation we'll have on the program in the coming minutes. Nigeria lost over 15 multinationals in 3 years. It's a page 3 read on the Guardian newspaper. There's a couple more stories for you this Monday morning, but let's leave it there for the Guardian. Mark.
Well, looking at a number of other stories right here, enamored with quite a number of them. Let's take a look at leadership for you. They have a very interesting story. Usually at the end of the year, leadership has celebrates one person or sometimes two people. I have seen a situation where two people will be celebrated as Person of the Year or Persons of the Year, as the case might be. This year, they have chosen the president to be the Person of the Year 2023. So that's what's on their front page. And they've given a reason right there for can-do spirit that has marked him out as a quintessential politician for bracing monumental odds to emerge as the candidate of his party, the APC, and winning the 2023 presidential election, and for a raft of difficult but necessary decisions to reposition the country. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is Person of the Year 2023. That's what's on the front page of leadership newspapers. But interestingly, they also have another story right there on the top of the paper. And it simply says why Nigeria is going down. So I don't know if you can marry the two, if there's any point where they meet, or you might want to pick up a copy of the leadership and see just what else they might have on the inside. Let's leave it there for the paper.
And up next is the Nigerian Tribune this morning, which is also perhaps one of the building blocks of our conversation this morning. Not very cheery, but we can all reflect on it. Importers, exporters incur losses as exchange rates hike bites. And there's just one rider. Review exchange rate policy, CPPE tells CBN. It's a page 6 read. We gather that over the weekend the naira, weakened yet again against the dollar. So there's a need for more proactiveness on the part of the CBN on ways to firm things up in that market. There's also some stories above the nameplate. Coups, Tinubu wants transition plan for Niger, Mali, others. There's a couple of riders there, or one or two to be precise. Harps on good governance to address citizens' concerns. ECOWAS authority directs standby force activation in kinetic mode. Well, the first seems to be more instructive, particularly when you look at the socioeconomic conditions in most of these African countries. There's a huge amount of disillusion, particularly about good governance. Right beside it, Clark to Tinubu, apply doctrine of necessity to resolve Ondo impasse. Condemns sharp division between Akeredolu, Ayedatiwa camps. Lawyers differ on forensic report on Akeredolu's signature. Interesting one there, and it's a page 22 read. So there's more confirmation that indeed the governor's signature may have been forged. And there's a big conversation on that on our sister political program from about 2 days before, where the Commissioner of Information also spoke. As a matter of fact, she in fact confirmed that the governor has about 2 signatures or thereabouts. So you can follow up on that, and perhaps it will be reviewed in the coming days for another round of conversation. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
2 signatures?
Yes, she confirmed that.
I don't know if everybody has the luxury of 2 signatures, but take a look at the Nigerian Tribune right now. The Vanguard, I should say. We've gone through Nigerian Tribune. Vanguard is next with this one. Manufacturing sector bleeds. as Forex loss rises 400% to 466 billion naira. Squeezes profit by 24.6%, leads to layoff of workers, multinationals exiting, threat to economy, analysts. It's on page 20. I think the story goes without saying. But then at the top left corner of the front page, you see the story from ECOWAS meetings. Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso alliance won't weaken ECOWAS resolve for democracy. Tinubu. So he gave a speech yesterday, and there were resolutions from that meeting as well, which we'll be getting into for you during the course of the program. And let me just say, there was that standing ovation for President George Weah of Liberia, an outgoing president, for the fact that he accepted defeat and all. Incidentally, former President Goodluck Jonathan was also in the room. So it's like, okay, this is going round. Let's see if we can get to that point where we want to get to as a continent and sub-region.
Yeah, so the question is, as far as good governance is concerned, how much of good example is followed on the continent? Who's going to replicate the feat of, the example, the conduct of George Weah?
That's a real question right there. Well, there's Mr. and Mrs. for you, something to lighten the mood, and it's in the spirit of Christmas, I guess. And you see, Mr. Looking at a list, apparently Mrs. handed him a list, and he says, all the things on this list for Christmas, how am I sure the list is not padded? And you see Mrs. telling him, well, take a look at it again and ask yourself whether you're going to have a Merry Christmas or not. And I just put it right at the choice is yours. Act wisely. Well, that's Mr. and Mrs. Just something to share.
A message for all Mrs. this morning.
And for all Misters, I guess?
Yes.
Okay. Just let's give you this one. It broke just very early in the morning, and it's about the Federal University Lafayette, the kidnapped students. They have regained their freedom. That's from Channels Television, just to give you an update on that story as we do a rounds of all of the major stories making the rounds of the students of Federal University Lafayette have regained their freedom. They were kidnapped recently, so that's some cherry news for you. That's the Vanguard newspaper. Okay.
Well, that's very interesting, considering the fact that the police had initially denied that anybody was kidnapped. I mean, they had said they hadn't heard from the school, and so couldn't confirm whether or not, students had been kidnapped. As a matter of fact, they denied all knowledge of that story. So it's a good thing that they eventually acknowledged, and that those students have now been rescued, and hopefully they are now going to be safe with their families. But let's quickly take a look at the Abuja Inquirer for you. It's right next. Yes, Abuja Federal Capital Territory is right next to Nasarawa State, where that university is. And here in Abuja, we're looking at this. AEPB raises alarm. Just in case you're wondering what the AEPB is, it is the Abuja Environment Protection Board, raising an alarm over unpaid bills threaten waste management in Abuja, alleges millions being owed, vows to seal up premises of debtors. So, debtors beware. Unpaid bills threaten waste management in Abuja. You'll find details on page 3 of the paper. On top of the nameplate, cool. ECOWAS sets condition for lifting Niger sanctions. That story is on page 3 of the paper for you. If you had any reason to be here in the Federal Capital Territory, on your way to the city gate, you would have seen that something very important was happening in the city, with all of the faces of the ECOWAS leaders put on streetlights on your way into the city, and then the flags of all the countries in the region also flying full mast in strategic places in the city, welcoming the leaders and also signifying they're all meeting right here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. And this, of course, was the outcome of their meeting. Cool. ECOWAS sets conditions for lifting Niger sanctions. The story is on page 3 of the paper. You also find here at the bottom, Buhari's government left 1.5 trillion naira debt for Works Ministry. That's according to Dave Umahi. So looks like they have, are they going to be clearing the debts first before they start any new work? I don't know, but you might want to read details on page 3 of the paper. Let's leave it there for the Abuja Inquirer.
And well, Daily Trust newspaper is what I'm looking at for you next. And, you know, it's a follow-up on the earlier side story from the front page of This Nigeria, where the CBN was blaming DMBs for Naira scarcity, sort of. But listen to this one. It's a further insight. Why Naira scarcity persists despite Supreme Court judgment. And there are 3 riders here for you. Queues for cash resurface. POS operators hike charges. Banks ration withdrawals, complain of cash limit. No need to panic. That's ascribed to a CBN official. I would have loved to know who the CBN official is, but it's a page 4 read. Well, look, it's Christmas, you know, and it's that time when you like to, you know, hand out a lot of Naira notes. You don't want to do transfers, you know. Family members are happier when they get Naira notes, so we hope that this is, you know, addressed in the shortest possible time so that we can celebrate with our Naira, however small the Naira is.
Naira is big, please. Have you seen the size of the Naira itself, the note?
Well, I hear you, Gadi, I hear you. There's this one right under it. After suspending airport concession, FG budgets 85 million Naira for consultancy. Well, that's not quite clear from, you know, the headline, but it's a page 14 read nonetheless, so that you get further insight. There's, you know, but there are bigger problems on the hands of managers of the aviation sector. You know, there's the trap funds, and you know, from one of the other papers we read earlier on, possibility of foreign airlines exiting, particularly due to the foreign exchange crisis. So we've had 15 investors exit within 3 years. Are we going to have the same challenge in the aviation sector, or something for the managers of the economy to look into? Now, there's this one at the bottom strip that is a bit disturbing. After Daily Trust report, FG goes after kidney traders. Is that human kidney or animal kidney? It's a page 4 read. Let's leave it there for Daily Trust newspaper.
Well, finally, Business Day has this one. It's a big story. Flutterwave plots Africa remittance dominance with 13 U.S. licenses. So, well, we'll see in the coming days how this, of course, plays out, understanding how competitive that particular sector can be with innovations coming up here and there on a daily basis, literally. But next to that story is one that, well, is quite concerning. And you see, inflation pushes companies' salary costs to 13-year high. And you just wonder just how high can it get, really? Because for a lot of people, what they're earning right now is not even enough.
And inflation has gone ahead to diminish the purchasing power of most Nigerians.
So you just wonder, is this like the night before the morning, you know, the whipping that has endured for night and joy coming in the morning? Are we about to turn a curve? Is there a miracle about to happen? Just what is going to happen in the coming weeks? Big questions, really. I do not have the answers. I wish I did, but at least we can ask the government and those responsible for it to give us answers and timelines as well, so we can work together. But there you have it. That's a look at the front pages for you this morning. You can see that it's going to be a very, very interesting week as we lead up to Christmas. But first, let's go on a break. And when we return, we'll get into the major discussions for the day. You do not want to miss this. Stay with us.
Well, yes, we are going to be talking about palliatives. Only recently, the federal government says it'd like to distribute 275 billion naira loan to manufacturers and micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in the country. But the modus operandi of how it intends to do that has not been made clear to manufacturers. Only recently, it also said it was going to distribute 50,000 naira to nano businesses around the country, I think in all 774 local government areas. How is this going to work out? I mean, will this really be a boost for people's businesses? And how long since the president did say subsidy is gone and all of the conversations that has happened around it, what real palliatives have been given to the manufacturing sector? Well, we have this morning the Director General of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Mr. Segun Ajayi Kadir, and he joins us via Zoom. Good morning, Mr. Ajayi Kadir. It's good to see you this morning. I do not know what the sector has been like. I know it's been pretty tough. We've been receiving news of how many more companies are closing down in the country. Big companies, and we're looking at, it will look like job losses again, but this bleeding, I don't want to say this gloomy picture that we're seeing. Is there any hope on the horizon in terms of what the federal government is currently putting in place for businesses, especially in the manufacturing sector?
Okay, well, good morning. I guess you wanted me to respond, but I didn't hear what you were saying. It was muffled. So I couldn't get the questions you are asking. I couldn't get you very well.
Oh dear, I hope you can hear me now. Can you hear me?
No, unfortunately, no. I cannot hear you.
Oh dear. Okay, so we'll try this again. I'm going to have to see if my colleagues in Lagos, if they speak, maybe you can hear them better. So maybe my colleagues in Lagos should start with the very first question to you. Kayode and Bukola, over to you.
Right, thank you, Mark. Mr. Ajayi Kadir, her question is quite simple. She was talking about the plan of the federal government to give out loans, palliatives, what have you, to nano businesses and other categories of businesses. And she's asking, particularly for the manufacturing sector, how are you receiving this? Is this something that is likely to improve your lot, as it were, and by extension, the lot of the sector in Nigeria? But generally, how are you receiving this particular plan?
Okay, thank you very much for having me. I think there's a bit of absence of clarity surrounding this, well, some prefer to call it palliative, but I think it's maybe loan facility to manufacturers. On one hand, there is this 75 billion to 75 companies, minimum of 75 companies. Then there's this 75 billion to nano, small, and medium scale industries. And I think from what you have asked, I believe you are talking about this, the latter. That is the 75 billion to nano, small, and medium scale industries. From what the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment said, this is going to be disbursed in collaboration between the ministry, SMIDAN, and working in concert with states, local governments, lawmakers, and so on and so forth. Now, what this suggests to me is that it is going to follow a pattern that is more like empowering people at the grassroots. And if you are going to give 50,000 to businesses, it means they are really, really small. And I think the government objective in that regard is to reduce poverty and reach small businesses that operate at the very, very low levels of the manufacturing value chain, if I may use the word. So to that extent, I think that is positive for them, because there are businesses that operate in that segment that is a huge challenge for them to get as low as 50,000. And so government will do well. And you know, government, primarily the actors are politicians who must have made promises during the campaign and who will have been able to feel the pulse of those who operate in that segment. And I believe this is a response to maybe the promises that have been made. But if we are to talk about the first one, and I think that is where we are majorly concerned, is that it needed to be also situated within the context of what the lack of credit has been to manufacturers. As you are aware, and we have had these conversations before, one of the major issues that manufacturers have is access to credit. The prevailing lending rate now for the average manufacturer is somewhere between 24 to 28%. And there is no manufacturing business you can do with that kind of credit facility that you'll be able to produce, make profit, and sell well. So I believe this intervention, 75 billion for minimum of 75 companies, is a step in the right direction in that it appreciates the challenge that prevails in that segment. But I must tell you, it's like a drop in the ocean. But I think why we commend government for this initiative is because it demonstrates an appreciation of the challenge that we have, and also justifies the arguments we have raised concerning government opening special windows to give credit to manufacturers, rather than us having to go to the commercial banks that have to charge rates that will certainly make us uncompetitive and not make us profitable. So I believe that if government succeeds with this one, it's likely to open more doors for other facilities.
So we know for that the grants, loans, palliatives for the nano businesses, I think application is open already. People can go on a certain website and apply for that one, which is for nano. But as you said, we have fairly bigger businesses, particularly manufacturers, the micro, small, medium enterprises, and then, of course, the big ones who, of course, are focused on the 75 billion naira. And this announcement was made by the president, in July? And, the time frame that the president gave was that, this government will support manufacturers with 75 billion naira between July and March next year. We know where the one with the nano businesses are, at least to a certain extent. They've opened applications. But where is the government, particularly in interfacing with you and giving out the funds with manufacturers? Where is the government right now with that? Has there been any activity whatsoever in that regard? If there has been, how much, if you're aware of that?
Okay, to the best of my knowledge, the government appears to still be consulting, and the time frame for startup is still up till March, like you rightly said. And yes, we have been consulted, and the advice we have given is that for everything that has to do with government money, you have to be accountable, you have to be sure-footed, you need to ensure that it's money well spent. Because this is taxpayers' money. And so the advice that we have given is that we needed to understand exactly what government was going to achieve by giving the credit. Are you going to promote backward integration with it? That is those companies that are backward integrating to sourcing of their raw materials. Are you trying to promote export-oriented companies? Are you trying to encourage those who have high potentials for employment? Are you trying to promote those who are likely to scale, or those who have imminent or present challenges about sourcing credit? So that will help you to narrow down on your strategy as to how you are going to disburse the funds. Because, we know how easy it is to be derailed in this regard when it comes to money, particularly now that we have a new administration and so many people will be jostling to have a share of the cake. But our government needed to be focused. Government needed to clearly define what it is so that we'll be able to identify deserving industries, and government will be able to monitor and evaluate the successes that have been achieved. Our interest, like I've said, is not in the fact that it is adequate. It is grossly inadequate. But we see it as a step in the right direction, and that it will give government a clear idea. If, for instance, government succeeds with this, it is going to encourage government to expand the envelope, if I may use the word, and to use the institution that is going to be, we have suggested BOI because they have a track record of success in this regard. It will help them to clearly identify which process is best if they succeed with one. And then they could think of recapitalizing BOI, they could think of opening a special purpose vehicle, allocating more funds, and so on and so forth. So we have been consulted. In summary, we've been consulted. We have offered advice as to what direction we think it should go. And we have said that we stand ready to be able to cooperate with government because we have the adequate record of more than 2,500 members. We know where they are located in Nigeria. We know what sector they belong to. We know what the challenges are. And we'll be able to cooperate with government to even ensure that it's government money and it's paid back because there is it's a loan, not a grant, and it's coming at single digit, even though we feel it should be lower than 9%.
Well, clearly there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in that regard because we know that time is of the essence. And when I mean work should be done, it should be done as a matter of urgency, really, because we can see that manufacturers are bleeding. The front pages tell that story. But you raised some very important issues. What is the government trying to achieve? Backward integration? Are they trying to improve export, focus on export-oriented businesses? Is it for employment, likely to scale? Some will even say, is it for social enterprises as well? You know, businesses that are not just focused on profit alone, but they have a social impact attached to them. If the government will make a big impact, I mean, 2,500 manufacturers, 75 billion naira. Again, we don't know how that will work, if it will just be across the value chains or the lump sum will be given to 75 major manufacturers. What would you advise the government to then focus on if this would be impactful and effective?
Okay, thank you. I think this is a very important question, and we had not specifically indicated to government which sector because we want to be sure of where government wants to go. Because whichever way they go, amongst those we have suggested, we will be able to support. But if you ask me, I think it will be good for us to focus on those ones who have high capacity to generate jobs, and you'll be looking at sectors that also ties into alleviating poverty and making food available to the people, which will see the value chain in the food and beverage sector. And that kind of money will be able to impact. If you go to heavy industries, 75 billion to one company may not even be adequate. But in the food and beverage value chain, yes, you'll be able to have some impact in that regard. Also, you could also think of those who concurrently have capacity for export. Because as you will have seen, the average disposable income of Nigerians is dwindling. We are entering into the AFCFTA proper. We are part of the pilot scheme. And there's a huge opportunity for even small and medium-scale industries to be able to trade across the border. So I think if government focuses on these two areas, it will be helpful. And the impact will be immediate, and government will be able to see. Like I said, I cannot discuss this matter without indicating that the amount is not adequate. We appreciate the government for doing this. It demonstrates an appreciation of the challenge, and we believe that it should be a test case for government to be able to scale and be able to address the issue of credit. Not that is the most critical challenge that we have, but it's part of it, and it will demonstrate government's readiness to improve that sector.
Interesting, Mr. Kadri. Some of the things that you have said suggest to me that the questions you're asking about, the direction of government, be it backward integration, the processing of raw materials at home, and all of that, have not been answered by government, and as well, your demand for the interest rates to be lower than 9%. You can confirm to us if there has been an engagement where all these concerns are raised and if government has addressed them. And, more importantly, if government has not addressed them, how can these loans be disbursed between now and March? You know that the initial deadline or time frame for the disbursement of the loans was between July, when it was announced, and March 2024.
Well, I think it took some time for ministers to be appointed, to settle down, and there has been quite a lot of movement, Mr. President, preoccupied with getting foreign direct investment, which is excellent, but we always say that you also have to think about those that are existing in the country, because we'll actually be the ones to, the best advertisement you can have is a satisfied customer. So, they should talk to us, they should deal with our challenges. So there has been a lot of busy schedule for government. So I think the process of consultations has been a bit delayed. The conversation is on. Yes, we've not had any closure as to whether there will be reduction in the rate from 9%. We have suggested 5% because, quite frankly, if you give any manufacturer any loan facility and you are charging more than 5%, you are not helpful. But single digits is still better than 25 to 26 to 27%. So those issues have not been answered. I believe and I hope that the urgency we have asked for will be adduced, and that before March, we'll be able to, get some traction on it, because, we know our members, we know where they are located, we know who the MDs are, we know what challenges they have. And in the question of a week or a month, we'll supply all the information that is needed to support the process. And like I said, we have indicated that we are ready. We are a bit concerned that the process is slow, but our government has to act with a lot of caution, and we are only hoping that more urgency will be brought to bear. And like I said, that this will be a test case so that during the course of the year, we can see much more money allocated in that regard.
Now, more on engagement, Mr. Kadri. The Presidential Committee on Tax Reform appears to have submitted the first part of its work. To what extent were manufacturers engaged on this? Because I've heard you say consistently in the past that the real issue is the multiplicity of taxes. So to what extent were you engaged, and what's the promise of the reduction in these number of taxes on the businesses of indigenous manufacturers in the country?
Yes, if you ask me, one of the best decisions that I believe has been taken by this administration is setting up that Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform. And MAN represents the organized private sector of Nigeria. I actually serve on that committee, and we have received every cooperation. We have participated in virtually all the engagements, and we are very happy with the low-hanging fruits, we called it, that has been submitted to Mr. President. While Mr. President was receiving the report from our chairman, our able chairman, I must say, he promised that he was going to implement. And I was very pleased to hear from the chairman of FRS that government is putting in place measures to ensure effective implementation of the recommendations. I believe that government is on the right track, that if President Tinubu would implement those recommendations that we have made, I think I will be a very proud Nigerian to say that we will have one of the best tax policies any country in Africa has ever had. Because we are going to tax the fruits and not the seed. We are not going to tax poverty. We are going to bring accountability to the system. There will be the use of technology, which will remove human interface that is breeding out for corruption and inefficiency in the system. We are going to drastically reduce the cost of collection, and we are going to ensure that taxes collected go to government coffers. So we are actively involved, we are consulted, and we are very happy with the way it is going. Some of my friends, because we actually have very strenuous engagements on this, we hold meetings at night, finish midnight. And when I talk to some of my friends, they say, we hope that President Tinubu will have the political will to be able to implement this. I believe he does. I pray he does. And I believe that Nigerian business environment will be the better for it.
Beyond your hopefulness about the political will of the president, I was hoping that you were going to give us specifics about those recommendations, the reduction of 60 different taxes, that manufacturers have to endure. What's the specific promise of reduction?
Okay, we are going to bring it to less than 10. Because all the 60 you mentioned, I don't think up to half of it really goes into government coffers that can be accounted for. And I believe it's in the public space. The MDAs, for instance, will be able to focus on their jobs of delivering service and not tax collectors or revenue agencies because they don't have the capacity to do so. So there are quite a number of them. And then we are going to seek the collaboration of all the states. So subnationals are going to be involved, and there are going to be legislations that has to be made to give effect to those recommendations that have been made. Those are very important recommendations that we believe that government should be able to implement very easily if we have all stakeholders. And I could see the chairman of FRS, he was appealing to the lawmakers that they should please give him support to be able to achieve it. All the MDAs also will need to come in to give support so that we can be smoothly implemented. Some of these practices that the recommendations seek to remove have been on for more than 40 years. We have laws that were made in 1939, 1940 that we have had to confront. So I think that if the president implements those recommendations, it will be very good for the economy. We have also spoken about harmony between fiscal and monetary policies, which we all agree has been counterproductive, the lack of synergy between them. So there are quite a number of recommendations that are made, and they are also in the public domain. I believe we have been very transparent, and even now we are still consulting with different segments of the society, in the villages, everywhere, for Nigerians to be able to have a say. Our chairman have said that we will reach every Nigerian that has something to say to ensure that they are able to say it. I hope I'm not sounding like a government worker, but I'm very passionate about the success of this committee.
Well, you're forgiven even if you did, but there seems to be a lot of promise there, from 60 to 10, which appears to, promise to bring relief to manufacturers and indeed small businesses. And I imagine that my colleague Maupe has a lot more questions for you in that regard. Maupe.
Well, thank you, Bukola. First and foremost, I'd like to, hear your take, because I also missed a little part of your initial intervention on the matter. So I'm not certain if my colleagues have taken you up on this issue of Procter & Gamble leaving Nigeria. They were doing a small part. I think they had closed largely some of their operations here in Nigeria, but we now hear that they're finally closing ground operations in Nigeria. First, how did this news hit you? And also the fact that, well, let's take that first. How did you receive the news?
Oh, my dear sister, unfortunately, I'm still not able to hear you. I can see that you are talking, but it's muffled and I can't decipher what you are saying, unfortunately. I cannot hear you. I can't hear what you are saying.
So I'm not certain if my colleagues in Lagos can hear me. If they can, it would be very helpful if they can.
Not to worry, Mark. We're carried to the rescue again. Well, the question for Mark is about the P&G. the recent news. They had been operating minimally at some point, but now we understand that they're moving to an import-based model now. And she's asking, how did you receive that first?
Well, obviously we received sadness, but it is not totally unexpected, and more may happen. Because there is no doubt that we operate in an environment that is challenged. We have always said it, and I think our channels, you have been very helpful in putting forward the measures. Manufacturing in any economy is a strategic choice. The government has to make up its mind whether it wants its country to be an industrialized one. And once you take that decision, you have to do all that is needed to remove the binding constraint that limits the performance of that sector. Nigeria has not done so, and that's why you can see that there are closures. I think it is news because it is P&G. It is news because it is GlaxoSmithKline. It is news because they've been in the country for a very long time. But there are several others that have died quietly, and for reasons that are clearly avoidable. But I think there's a strong lesson to be learned here, which is the fact that the big ones that are exiting are those multinationals. And I think this should send a clear signal to government that, regrettable as it is, it should guide future action. We need to be strategic in what we promote. So what this means is that if you have a challenged local manufacturer, he's not likely to go anywhere. As a matter of fact, he doesn't have anywhere to go to. That is why we are saying that foreign direct investment is excellent. It has led to phenomenal improvement in the performance of manufacturing sectors of so many economies. But it should come secondary to empowering the local investor, the existing manufacturers, because that is what is enduring. That is what can allow you to scale. That is where you have certainty that come rain, come shine, as they say, is going to be here with you. So it is regrettable, to answer your question directly, and it's not totally unexpected. And I think except we take clearly defined measures, many more will happen. As you can see, quite a number of issues are due. There lack of, they couldn't repatriate their forex. They also had challenge with multiplicity of taxes. We have been part of the conversation as to what the challenges are. And it's not different from how others are challenged.
Oh dear. So when you say that more are still coming, a lot of people thought we had seen the worst. How can we reverse this? Because looking at the front page of The Guardian says, 15 companies have had to close down in the past 3 years. You say that it doesn't even maybe capture the full picture. So when you say more are still coming, are you saying more multinationals? Are you saying more local manufacturers are still going to close down, shut businesses? And as you said, those ones don't have where to go to. So what exactly do you mean by more are still coming? Is there any stopping it as well?
Yes, there is, if the current situation does not improve, certainly we'll have more closures. It's business. You are in business to make profit. And once the environment is not conducive for you to recover your costs and make profit, you close shop. Because you must have borrowed money, you must have put your own money, you must have engaged talents who work with you that you have obligation to pay. So once all these are not adding up, you simply close shop. And it's not difficult. And I don't think I'm making any statement that should not be expected, that you can't keep on doing the same thing and expecting a different result. If the challenges that we have identified, I think about 4 days ago, a member called to say that the duty, he was paying duty on his raw materials at 500 million naira. and that by the adjustment of the calculation of his import duty, it has jumped to 700 million. Now, how are you going to pass on this 200 million to the end user? Meanwhile, his disposable income has continued to dwindle. So if this is a multinational or it's a local company, certainly it's going to reduce its capacity utilization. It's going to downsize, and it's going to produce less and make less profit. It's not going to be competitive. And foreign similar products that come from outside the country where it's a low cost, we beat him in the marketplace. So that is how companies die. There's no magic. So there are quite a number of issues. Thankfully, multiplicity of taxes may be a thing of the past soon, but you also see electricity. The cost of diesel has continued to rise, which is the alternative. And you can imagine how it's going to impact on the system. There's also the scarcity of forex to import raw materials that are not locally available. That is needed for productivity. If that is not there, it's hardship for existing manufacturers. And what is going to happen to their business, your guess is as good as mine. There's insecurity that has truncated the value chains, the supply of our raw materials, those ones that we are able to source here. It needs to be addressed. If it is not addressed, the implications very clear that it's going to happen. I think we have said it, and we hopefully, very soon we're looking forward to having a conversation. Nigeria needs to have a conversation between manufacturers and government. We have asked for it this severally, for us to decide whether we want this country to manufacture or not. Because there are certain things that countries that are surviving, that have become manufacturing hubs, there are certain things they do that we are not doing. And except we start to do it, we won't make any headway. We won't make any headway. And we cannot say this more than enough. We are having engagement with government. We are hopeful that we move from talk to action, and that we do the things that are needed for you to be able to have a vibrant manufacturing sector. Africa should have been ours for taking. The AFCFTA has offered an excellent opportunity for us to rule Africa in terms of market access and so on. But if we are not competitive, if we do not take deliberate measures to remove all these binding constraints that we have spoken about and is beginning to sound like a broken record, we will not take the advantage. And it will be very unpleasant for Nigeria that has so much potential and has the capacity, the human capacity, the natural resources, and even the respect and the image to be able to deliver.
Mr. Kadri, I've been turning over in my mind the figure you put out, 500 million naira paid on import duty alone. Then how much would be the cost of the raw material that your colleague is importing? That's a huge one. And I was going to ask, with the exit of these foreign manufacturers, what the potential is, for manufacturing opportunities for indigenous manufacturers. But I reckon that you have answered pretty much a lot of the questions, in your last commentary. But then again, it throws up a lot of questions. If Procter & Gamble is now adopting the import model and taking jobs, with them, how can local manufacturers be protected? And then again, what's the, it leaves a big question mark on government's ease of doing business policy. So has it been well thought out if these manufacturers, foreign manufacturers, are exiting the scene?
Well, I think I would like to start from the last one. And we worked very well with the government, the special advisor who was in charge of ease of doing business. And what we have said is that ease of doing business is different from cost of doing business. If it's easier for you to register companies and it's easier for you to put in processes that make it more efficient, only for the company to die after 1, 2, 3 years of operation, because cost will simply kill the company. So we have been moving up the rating in terms of ease of doing business, but we have not done well with the cost of doing business. And I think that is key. At the end of the day, every talk about manufacturing is what is going to happen in the marketplace. If you produce and you don't sell, you are going to invest on hiring warehouses where you keep those manufactured items. And if you are not careful, because we always have expiry date, it will expire and you have to pay for disposal of those items. That's how simple it can get. So we have not done well in this. And what can be done to protect local industries? There are conventional measures that are taken. That is one of it is ensuring that the imports do not come in at rates that will allow them to compete unfavorably with the locally manufactured ones. So that's the use of duty. There is also the idea of incentivizing local manufacturers so that you are able to bring their cost lower than and then be able to allow them to operate. But the critical issue here is that there are agreements that Nigeria has signed, for instance, like the AFCFTA, which is going to reduce duty of more than 90% of all the items imported to less than 10%. And so there's a limit to which you can use higher duties to constrain or to constrain importation. Right. You specifically mentioned that P&G is going to resort to the import, and that is where the problem is, which right. means that they are going to be able to import from economies that have low cost. It then means more trouble for local indigenous manufacturers who are producing similar products. And that's what we are saying. When you allow imports, when import is prioritized, you create jobs outside and unemployment inside. So let's say there's an avalanche of imports of those materials. It's just simply going to subsume the ones that are produced locally. And I think it is more worry for jobs. So we don't have only lost the ones for P&G. Then you should be preparing for the ones that will be heavily impacted by their imports. So, okay. I mean, you can't run away from government has a responsibility to make the environment conducive for business. That is the bottom line.
And I think that's a great place to anchor, something to chew on. If we're asking who is next, we should also ask, what can we do to protect our manufacturers, our jobs, and our economy? But I'd like to thank you so much, Mr. Segun Ajayi-Kadir, for your time on the program. He's the DG of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Thank you, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll take a moment now. When we return, recall the president saying good governance is a panacea for coups in the sub-region. How much of good governance are we having? How can we ensure we get better with this? That's our conversation next. Stay with us.
It's the 64th ordinary session of the ECOWAS Authority of the Heads of State and Government taking place in the State House Conference Center. In attendance are representatives of regional and continental bodies, members of the diplomatic corps, and other invited guests. The program commences as President Bola Tinubu arrives, accompanied by other heads of government. The president of ECOWAS Commission gave an overview of developments in the region and hailed the commitment of member states to address challenges.
Excellencies, political stability, peace, and security remain critical for our region. The flow of foreign capital and intra-regional trade and investment have been affected by the risk rating of our region. We are challenged to improve the business environment in our communities, to take advantage of the growing interest of investors in our community.
For President Tinubu, the region's stand against unconstitutional change of government must be unwavering.
By providing good governance that tackles the challenges of poverty, inequality, and other concerns of the people, we will have succeeded in addressing some of the root causes of military intervention in civilian process in our region. Democracy must win if we fight for it, and we will definitely fight for democracy.
He calls for a standing ovation for President George Weah of Liberia, who conceded defeat in the country's recent elections and congratulated his opponent. Following a 3-hour closed-door session, the resolutions are read out by the president of the commission. Part of the resolution is for the ECOWAS Commission to come up with actionable recommendations that will increase transparency and credibility of elections in the region. The authority also condemned the continued detention of Niger's President Mohamed Bazoum by the Nigerian National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland, CNSP, and called for his release.
The authority decides to set up a committee of heads of state to engage with CNSP and other stakeholders with a view to agreeing on a short transition roadmap, establishing transition organs, as well as facilitating the setting up of a transition monitoring and evaluation mechanism towards the speedy restoration of constitutional order. Based on the outcomes of the engagement by the Committee of Heads of State with the CNSP, the authority will progressively ease the sanctions imposed on Niger.
The Commission also considered reports that some member states were considering setting up a separate alliance, and in their deliberations, they resolved to reject such alliances that seek to divide ECOWAS. From the Presidential Villa, Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
Well, you've seen that report. I did tell you at the beginning of this program that conference did hold yesterday, the meeting of ECOWAS heads of state happening right here in Abuja, and the mood, especially in terms of how the city was set up, welcoming the heads of states and government in the ECOWAS region. Well, to discuss some of the outcome, as reported by our correspondent there, Lanre Lasisi, from that particular meeting, we have with us this morning Ambassador Hassan Mohammed Hassan, was the former Deputy Chief of Mission and Permanent Observer to the Organization of American States. He's also an economist and member of the APC BOT of APC Professionals Forum. Ambassador, welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you, Mope. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the last time we saw a meeting like this, very interesting outcomes. The coup from Niger and Mali and Burkina Faso were high on the priorities list.
Right.
And ECOWAS was reeling out sanctions, saying what they would stand for and what they would not stand for. There were fears in the air as to whether or not Nigeria or even the ECOWAS states were going to invade Niger. But this particular meeting, we're now saying that the conversation is now shifting into what could have caused the coups in the very first instance. Is this a very good shift in position?
Absolutely. It's a very good shift in position because fighting war itself is a capital project that ECOWAS will not want to embark on. And right now, the easier way, which I'm happy ECOWAS has embarked upon, is trying to know what are the bases that causes, what are the reasons for coups. So through this, I'm sure they will find solution to most of our problems. And in West Africa, you have, it's not only Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, but there were skirmishes in Gabon, skirmishes in Sierra Leone. So if all our leaders come together and look at the issues critically, I'm sure they will find solutions.
Well, we have one at least good story to tell since the last time that the ECOWAS leaders met, which is the situation in Liberia.
Yeah.
Successfully, an election was held there, and the incumbent president, George Weah, acknowledged defeat, and congratulated his opponent, Joseph Boakai,
That's right.
who has now emerged as president of the country, although he's yet to be sworn in. And we see there that ECOWAS leaders stood up to give him a standing ovation for doing that.
That's true.
Do you think, while that might be commendable, and some people say, oh, that's an incentive, you have to ask, are we really at the point where, it's like as if our leaders are being treated like school children, oh, clap for him for doing the right thing. Shouldn't that be taken for granted?
It shouldn't be, because in Africa, the tradition or the norm is people cling on to power. So anybody that is doing something contrary to that deserves an applause. And I believe George Weah, President George Weah, I congratulate him, I commend him. And similar to what happened during Goodluck Jonathan and Buhari. And this gave way to progress, it eliminates rancor that may eventually put a specific country in trouble. So these approaches, I believe, if they are not, as you said, school children applauding them for what they should do, but I believe this approach is a mild way of saying, yeah, thank you, and we appreciate it.
Well, there are countries, even within the West African sub-region now, that this is now being taken for granted. I cannot imagine, for instance, that a Ghanaian president loses an election and, in a meeting of ECOWAS leaders, he's, applauded for having, congratulated his opponent. It would seem that in some countries, democracy has now come to stay. They have taken it that it has indeed come to settle down, and a transition from one government to the other, be it in opposition or be it the ruling party, is now running very smoothly. Do you think that if this were, and I don't know if you agree with me, so you can tell me, if you think that if this were a Ghanaian president, would we have been seeing the same kind of applause?
Yeah, I think so, because even though Ghana has been, the transition in that country has been relatively smooth, but if someone does something good, it's good to praise that fellow.
Okay. I cannot argue with that.
Okay.
I mean, because indeed, things could have gone all right. And I had the privilege to be in Liberia, and I do know that for the people of Liberia, peace was, topmost on their agenda.
So that's right. Based on their experiences of civil war, of 10 years civil war,
indeed,
chopping people's hands, murdering thousands, hundreds of thousands, and that was the Sierra Leone and Liberia. That was it gave the impetus for the creation of ECOMOG, and it costed West African countries a lot. So if we can go the way of peace, I think is better.
So if a way to encourage our leaders to do more is just an applause, why not? I mean, who can fault that? But let me take you up on this issue of, creating a business environment, because I think that the president of the meeting, when he convened, when he started to, say why they were gathered, talked about how the ECOWAS region needed to make itself more attractive to foreign direct investment, and how they needed to do more. And I think it's very important that sometimes, much as we've been focusing on the politics in recent times, the very first word in in the abbreviation, the acronym, ECOWAS, economic community. They came together for economic reasons.
Right.
Would you say that when you look at how we have been, some of the progresses that have been made, or some of the initiatives that have been undertaken in recent times, there has been greater focus on that economic aspect of the economic community coming together?
Yeah, the economic community also encompasses political cooperation. And so far, I believe ECOWAS has done relatively well when you compare them with, when you compare it with SADC, for example, or the Economic Community of East African States. ECOWAS, I believe, have done well, and I give them a pass mark because we have embarked on a lot of projects: healthcare, economy as a whole, and political associations, and trying to bring up almost all facets of our lives. So ECOWAS might be struggling, but when you see the mammoth of job before them and how far they have acquitted themselves from discharging those responsibilities, I believe. And again, there are constraints. We have financial constraints, we have political constraints, we have so many things. So I think by and large, we can't afford to look at ECOWAS as if it's a drain on the system. ECOWAS has done very well.
But it certainly could be doing much more.
Oh yeah, it certainly could be doing much more. But even at the UN, they consider ECOWAS, they have respect for the organization. Yes.
Because I'm looking at, for instance, the EU.
Yes.
And the progress that they were able to make over a period. When you look at, just where they currently are, the fact that, many more members want to join the EU for a number of reasons, of course, and they now are the ones setting conditions and saying, no, you have to do this, you have to do that, you must be this, you must be that before you can, join us. Here we have 3 countries that have now been, bans have been placed on them, not just bans, sanctions have been placed on them.
Yes.
And you find a situation whereby rather than trying to see how it is they can meet the criteria and see how they can join the economic community back as a result of some of the incentives that they have received or they're currently missing out on, you find a situation where they're forming their own organization. Well, ECOWAS has said, we don't recognize that. We will resist every attempt for you to do a thing like that. But doesn't it speak to the fact that, or doesn't it speak to, the powers that ECOWAS by itself wields? You would think that the incentives alone would discourage any other group from trying to, follow another path, so to speak.
Yeah, when you look at ECOWAS, comparing ECOWAS to European Economic Communities, European Community, EU, you're not being very fair to ECOWAS, because ECOWAS is, they have a lot of constraints: economic, political, social, and also there are so many issues of health problems and all this. And coming to the formation of the association, or coming together of Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, they are forming what you call the Sahel Association. But they have not, they are only sanctioned. They have not been driven out of ECOWAS. They are still members, but they have been suspended. So what I will want to suggest to ECOWAS leaders is they tread softly. These guys, they've been offended, and they take it as...
They've been offended?
Yeah, they take it as if they've been offended. They take it as if they have been offended. I'm not saying they've been offended, but that is their own understanding. And that's because the whole West African governments condemned the coup, and they are rightly so. They have the right to condemn because it's ECOWAS, EU, and all over the world. So they see as if they've now been boxed into a corner. They are struggling. So let's do it in a diplomatic fashion, treat them very well to an extent. Sometimes it may be a bit ridiculous, but we can get them back to the negotiating table, and we don't raise issue about their association initially, but let's drive them to a point when they will accept handing over and all this. And, you know, actors, if we push them to a point when they hand over to civilian governments, the modus operandi may change, and their thinking and outlook might be something different. So we just have to manage this situation, because ECOWAS it won't be good for ECOWAS to be fractured. It won't be good.
You see a situation where it can happen? Being fractured?
Yeah, they have initiated it. They have initiated it.
Okay.
Yes, but we shouldn't. The governments of ECOWAS now, the way they are going about it is the best way. They not laying emphasis on their association, they lay emphasis on ECOWAS, and eventually they will come to an understanding.
Okay, well, let's quickly take a break at this point. I know that we also have other guests who will also be weighing in on this matter. We'll take their viewpoints when we come back from this break. Please stay with us.
Well, you're welcome back. Let's expand the conversation now. Yes, there's diplomacy going on within member countries within ECOWAS, but there's also the issue of governance, which President Tinubu talked about. Good governance, I should say. I want to bring in Mr. Yudis Atanko, who's the chief spokesman of the Labour Party's Presidential Campaign Council, who joins us virtually this morning from Kaduna, Northwest Nigeria. It's good to have you on the program, Mr. Yudis Atanko. I just want to get your thoughts on, you know, yes, there's a diplomacy, but then there's good governance. And I think at the heart of the conversation is good governance. And the president, President Bola Tinubu, spoke specifically about that, saying that good governance might just be the solution to authoritarian, forceful takeover of government, particularly in the ECOWAS region. I'd like to get your thoughts on that. If that is a clear solution, then how much of good governance would you say we have? Maybe if you can't speak for the sub-region in Nigeria here.
Okay, it is very important. Don't mount issues, but we put action to them. Action to them meaning that you do what you say, and then the feeling will be symbiotic within you and the people. Let me give you a clear-cut example. It is very, very clear that the doctrines of democracy actually rely basically on the people. The people are the main source of your power, and the people are the one that you are supposed to deliver the dividends of democracy to. Now, in the case where the dividends of democracy is not delivered clearly, it creates apathy, it creates distrust, it makes the people feel unwanted. When they know, ab initio, that actually they are the one that give you that particular power, collective power for you to lead them and lead them aright. And that is where the word good governance comes in. Good governance means providing for the needs of the people. Don't give them what you think they need, but what they tell you that they need. Most of the times, most leaders in the ECOWAS sub-region completely, they do what they feel like doing. I saw a video of a leader in Guinea-Bissau. He was all dressed up in white. He was supposed to be the leader, all dressed up in white, looking so fashionable. The people around him and his young children were just around him looking so wonderfully beautiful. But when you look at the people on the other side, even the road in which he applied was completely untarred. The people are looking so dejected. They are looking neglected. And that, of course, does not reflect good governance. Now, these are the basics that leads to apathy and make the people feel very, very aggrieved. So what do they look for? They look for those who can give them this succor, who can take care of their needs. Do you know, for example, that one of the things that made the Liberian election, just like as I read, was that the Liberian election was led by the Electoral Commission on good planning and execution. That means the process seems to be in the interest of the people. In fact, it was internally funded. It was not funded by international donors, just like we usually have in Nigeria. Now, there was similar chances that the election was actually free and fair. And that, of course, resulted to George Weah, the president, then accepting the result of the election. Now, these are processes that lead to good governance. When you have good processes that emanated into good elections, the people will see good governance in display. And that, of course, is very important. As in Nigerian case, I'm telling you, we have not seen, there may have been some slight, improvement in some states, but generally, the people have totally been neglected. And that is causing a lot of apathy and distrust within the system.
So speak to us about where we're getting it wrong then. And I think you've also spoken about the sub-region largely, and we've seen the situation, the indices, they're quite clear when it comes to poverty, the economy, and the rest. We have been on this democratic journey for decades now, some even longer than Nigeria. We have democracies that are even older than Nigeria, on the continent. So what exactly is the issue? Is it that democracy, what we have borrowed, whether you like it or not, borrowed from other climes, is not fit for our situation in Nigeria, and maybe it's time to explore something that is well tailored to our realities here in Nigeria? Some would say it's like wearing a winter jacket, which you took from Canada. You're wearing it here in Nigeria where the temperature is really high. It wouldn't work. It doesn't make sense. So what exactly is the problem? Is it that we're using the wrong system, or the people who are using that system aren't using it appropriately? Have you been able to diagnose this? Because I know you've been involved with other political movements aside the Labour Party.
Research has shown that the principle of democracy is being negated by our leaders. Democracy is good because there's a feedback. There's a connectivity within the people and the leaders. But if the principle of leadership is being negated, it causes a problem. Now, let me give you an example. We've had opportunities of having military leadership. Some of the military leadership can be adjoined to be good. We remember the case of Murtala Muhammad, who was pro-people, and he was seen clearly. But of course, it was an autocratic leadership. It's a one-way ticket. You give an order, nobody gives you a feedback, so you cannot even react. But in the case of democracy, there's a voice of the people. In fact, the people are the one who decide. But the major problem we have as a people in practicing democracy is that this particular winner takes all, I must win at all costs. It's embarrassing if I am the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and somebody come and defeats me, and so I look stupid. That how can I allow them to defeat me after I have all the powers to use to continue to put myself in power? But the leaders forget that they can only be in that power for a certain period of time. They cannot go beyond that. So they should apply the doctrine of the principle of the interest of the people, knowing fully well that if they do the right thing, the people remain with them for a very long time, even after they've left office. But if they do bad, the people continue to look at them with pain and pang and reflect on their bad deeds. So the principle of democracy is about doing the good thing for the interest of the people. You can only apply and call for support and vote from the people You cannot force yourself on them. The moment they see that there's a slight interest in forcing yourself onto them, they look at you with disdain, disrespect. The issue of illegality and legitimacy come into being, just like what we are simply seeing in some of the elections that has happened in Nigeria. But if they know they elected you and they make sure that you are their president, they will stand by you, work together with you in symbiotic to ensure that whatever kind of dividends you intend to give to them is being delivered. But where there is a discord, they don't work with you. They only allow you to do whatever you want to do unto them. And they keep on praying to you, praying against you, even in the mosques and the churches, that you may not survive that particular position. This is happening. So what we need to do is appeal to our leaders who find themselves in the position of power to apply the principles of democracy, which is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Once that is done, you will see that the country will grow. The continent itself will grow. There will be production. There will be innovative. There will be creativeness. There will be solid relationship between the different ethnic groups, because you do not favor one group against other. The moment you do that, that is where the discord comes, and then you find yourself in a very undeveloped country, just like we are seeing right now.
Well, a lot for African leaders to chew on, and we hope that they're watching either directly or by proxy, such that actions can be taken. We also have, our guest who joins us via Zoom, Mr. Adebayo Oluwake, Global Affairs Analyst. And I'm coming to you now, Mr. Oluwake. I wonder if you began following the conversation from the beginning. Our guest in Abuja acknowledged what seems to be a paradigm shift, following this meeting with ECOWAS leaders in Abuja, the presidential villa. A shift from what seems to be aggression, particularly after the Niger coup, to a calmer stance now, reflecting on the state of governance in Africa. I wonder if this is also reflective of the weakness of the instrumentality of ECOWAS itself to respond to coups, particularly if you recall that these coups had been on for quite some time. Even under former President Muhammadu Buhari, the most that he could do at that time was to call for, the European Union to support sanctions against coupists in Africa. Do you acknowledge this, Mr. Oluwake?
Yes, good morning and thank you for having me. I agree completely that the speech we heard, especially from President Bola Tinubu as chair of the Authority of Heads of State of ECOWAS, was a paradigm shift. Not just from him, but if you look at all the other leaders who superintend over sub-regional instruments like SADC, the Southern African Development Community, or the East African Customs Union, Central African Customs Union and the East African Community, we've never had the leadership of those sub-regional economic communities speaking the way President Tinubu spoke yesterday. I also feel that it is a response to the criticism that has come from many observers that ECOWAS responds, or rather reacts, without actually dealing with the root causes of the unconstitutional changes in power that we have been having. Remember that when we had what was then the Organization of African Unity, OAU, which has metamorphosed into the African Union, there was a cardinal principle in the OAU at the time, which was what was called the principle of non-interference in the internal affairs of member states. But that has changed, because especially with the Democracy and Good Governance Protocol of ECOWAS, which was adopted in 2001, ECOWAS came out boldly to say that you cannot have an unconstitutional change of government, which was a demonstration of the fact that it will intervene in the internal affairs of its member states if they went wrong. And we saw that done during the regime of General Sani Abacha, when ECOMOG reversed the coup by Lieutenant Colonel Johnny Paul Koroma in Sierra Leone. He had overthrown the elected president, President Ahmad Tejan Kaba. That coup was reversed in an operation led by Brigadier General Maxwell Kobe of the Nigerian Army. So we have seen ECOWAS come a long way. That speech is pointing us into a new direction. But I also think that it is also a tacit admission by ECOWAS that it had not reflected deeply before it started reacting to the spate of coups that we have had. Hopefully, it's now determined to hold its members, its leaders accountable.
But Mr. Loake, when you look at the alliance that Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso are forming now, the rejection of tax domination by France, and on the other hand, defense pact, isn't it also instructive, particularly with regards to the African unity that the founding fathers of the African Union had spoken of in the era of independence? Regardless of the fact that anyway, it's coming with, a type of government that is not so attractive?
Well, the alliance being formed, which President Tinubu described as a distraction, by the way, when he was speaking yesterday, I see this as more of grandstanding. And why do I say that? At the moment, those three countries are in dire straits. In terms of their geopolitical and geosecurity strategic calculations, they're in dire straits. Burkina Faso is having significant threat from jihadi forces. It has not made any significant progress against them. Guinea doesn't have any jihadi threat, and Guinea is a coastal country. So Guinea is not particularly as exposed as Burkina Faso and Mali, that are landlocked countries. But Guinea is under sanctions nonetheless, from ECOWAS as well as from the EU. And then when you look at Mali, Mali has also lost significant territory to jihadi forces. Only about a week ago, the Malian forces were able to recapture Kidal. Kidal is particularly significant in the geopolitical calculations, for Mali and in its fight to regain all lost territories by jihadis. But when you put all of this together, you find out that this week, these two countries in particular, Burkina Faso and Mali, are significantly on the back foot in terms of security. Economically, they are under sanctions. So I feel strongly that the so-called alliance is essentially just to see how they can harness the relationship between the three of them, because they are all contiguous, and see how they can benefit, especially since Guinea will keep its ports open for goods to come in, even if they are not going to admit that publicly. Now, not only are these three countries trying to have this so-called alliance, to try to see how they can survive by working together, but we shouldn't forget that even Sierra Leone, which to my surprise, ECOWAS is strongly backing Madabio. Madabio had already been fraternizing with the military leadership in Guinea, and when he had his own coup scare just a couple of weeks, 2 weeks back, to me, I said maybe it was something to bring him home to reality, because he was defying ECOWAS, he was defying the AU, and he was defying the UN. So Sierra Leone's position also is not exactly too clear. But I don't think that these countries have the weight to surmount the pressures that ECOWAS is imposing on them. I think their action at the moment is just optics, for the optics, basically.
Well, the coming days will be telling, and I'm going to follow up on much of what you said. I'm coming to you now, Ambassador Hassan in Abuja. As you reflect on much of what Mr. Olowake has said, how will the change in stance, first of all, of the ECOWAS leaders following this meeting will deter further coups in Africa? And do you agree that these alliances being formed by, these coupists, this military leaderships in these three countries, is not well thought out, according to Mr. Olowake?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Mr. Olowake stated it very succinctly. The approach should be carrot and stick. Where they've done well, we commend them. Where they did wrong, we not sanction them, but we talk to them in a way that they could understand. So the approach to having the good governance model is we have what we call peer review mechanisms. The peer review mechanisms, we have parameters within which what is the ideal situation for a good government. And we rate those governments of West African states against those parameters. Where somebody is doing very well, we commend that state. Where somebody is doing very badly, we tell them you need to improve. That is the way to go about it. And also we have to try to understand their situations at home. The situations at home might be completely different from what we have in our respective countries. So that is a very serious factor. So if we understand where they are coming up and where things are happening, that gives us a very good knowledge of what is happening in particular state, and it gives us where we can come in with some input and where we can come in with some improvement or suggestions.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see, just how much the ECOWAS is able to sustain this talk. I mean, because part of what people will be looking to see is whether or not ECOWAS could also evolve into an organization where there is peer review. When they start to talk about good governance and the fact that they need to maintain stability for them to be able to achieve the economic objectives of their coming together in the very first instance, people will say that it should go beyond transiting from one government to the other, or just having elections. In terms of, because you talked about some of the other indices, for instance, investments in health, investments in education. There needs to be big conversations around what each member state is doing and how it can be done better. So let me go to you, Mr. Oluwake. I don't know if you can, I hope you can hear me this time around. I'd like to know whether you think that ECOWAS is actually making the right moves in this direction. Yes, just last week we saw them hand out checks, I think of about $250,000 to some member states that are still dealing with fistula, gynecological fistula. I'm looking for is it obstetric fistula? Yeah, that's the right word. Obstetric fistula. They gave some member states who are still dealing with this checks to be able to handle that particular problem in their states. But beyond that, do you think that ECOWAS is actually looking at becoming an organization where members can review themselves to see how one is doing better than the other in certain areas and coming up to par?
Absolutely, Mark, but that's the way to go, actually. If you look at ECOWAS, they've been pretty strong in supporting political transitions when states are having elections. And yesterday, President Tinubu was also talking about providing technical and material support for the transitions in Guinea, Mali, and Burkina Faso, if those countries agree on a short and quick transition to democracy. But ECOWAS should go beyond that completely. I agree. His Excellency Ali Toure, the chairperson of the ECOWAS Commission, while he was talking yesterday, complained that member states are no longer remitting part of the customs dues, the percentage of the customs dues that they are supposed to remit to ECOWAS. And he was asking the chairman of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State to prevail on those member states to fulfill their obligations. When ECOWAS is able to raise its own funds, it's going to be able to do a lot more in social sectors. ECOWAS also, in fact, has, for me, no choice than to see how it can generate funding within the community. Because so far, it has often depended a lot on partners, especially the European Union. And part of the problems why, for example, it couldn't enforce its decisions on Niger was because the position of most of the citizens of ECOWAS, with regard to the Nigerian problem, was that we needed to support our own people and not be an instrument in the hands of France or be an instrument in the hands of the European Union. So without ECOWAS being able to generate its own funds to put into social sectors in member states and having to depend on foreign institutions, its own sovereignty in terms of its political will and decisions could always be interpreted to be that of these external powers who are financing it. But I believe that there's enough within the sub-region, mineral resources and all that, especially if ECOWAS improves its collection and if there's a political will by member states to provide funds for these social sector interventions.
Well, thank you for your response. Let me go to Mr. Tanko now. I'd like to know whether you think that the sanctions that have been put in place are enough to deter members from, not doing the right thing when it comes to elections having been conducted in their states, and rightful people have been put in place. We have a situation whereby coups have happened in a number of states within the ECOWAS sub-region. Do you think that the sanctions that have been in place have been sufficient to deter members in this regard?
Well, the truth is that sanctions can only be effective on any nation when the nation that is under sanction sees that those who are actually giving out the sanction on its own country have also legitimate issues not hanging on them. What I mean is that if there's a niche within them and then the country that is already under sanction, if a country, for example, like Burkina Faso or Niger or Mali or Guinea, as the case may be, see that all the other ECOWAS countries have enough influence on that particular country that is being under sanction, they will oblige. So you can put up a lot of sanction on the country, but the effectiveness will be very, very slow, especially when the country sees itself as if surviving on its own. Because the sanctions that were being given are economic sanctions. And so economic sanctions, how effective or how influential have been the other countries on that country? Just like we've already explained now, we have not gotten enough influence on all of this. So that watered down the sanction. So the sanction is not really that effective. In fact, what will end up is a moral suasion and persuasion that may end up working in certain ways, but not really sanction as the case may be. Because if you notice, most of the people who are affected in Niger, for example, you will see that the people were jubilant. They were jubilant about the coup. That means that they were happy that certain situation took place. But when Nigeria was making the position of possible military intervention and the rest of them, they were like a resistance by the people. Resistance with abusive language on our own country. And I know it happens on other ones too. So you see, that means that we have not really have more or less like a lot of power that we thought we have on Niger because of our closeness. Yes, of course, we give them electricity and all of that, but then Niger is looking at itself and saying, look, I can do without Nigeria. I can survive without Nigeria. I can survive without Ghana. I can survive without Togo. I can survive without any of these other countries. So,
well, Mr. Tanko, it will be very interesting to do a poll in that country now and see how many months after whether or not the people are still jubilant in terms of, the rulership that they're currently experiencing in the countries where coups have taken place. But we do know that this is an ongoing conversation. It's something that we cannot finish discussing in one fell swoop. So we will thank you very much for intervening this particular morning. Mr. Yunusa Tanko is the chief spokesman of the Labour Party presidential campaign.
Thank you very much for having me. God bless Nigeria.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. We've also had with us Ambassador, just before we come to you, Ambassador, Mr. Adebayo Oluwake, who's a global affairs analyst. We have to thank you so much for joining the conversation this morning on Sunrise Daily. And of course, I've had with me here in the studio Ambassador Hassan Mohammed Hassan, former Deputy Chief of Mission and permanent observer to the Organization of American States, an economist, and also a member of the APC BOT of APC Professionals Forum. Mouthful there. Well, thank you so much for coming on as well.
Thank you very much, and God bless Nigeria.
Amen. Well, time has been fast spent this morning. We have to apologize to our viewers. Some who have taken pains to send very lengthy emails. We see you, Olagunjo Oladele and Abiru Kenneth. Thank you so much for sending your feedback. We have to say, well, thank you so much for watching this beautiful Monday morning. We hope that you have a very productive week. I'm Welcome, Yusuf.
Indeed, thank you for watching. Have a blessed week ahead. I am Bukola Koka.
Hey, go out there and win. All right. I'm Kayode Kikili. Goodbye.